All right, everyone, welcome back to PFL for another session. This is session 42. Really excited. We're going to do different tonight. Tonight, we decided that it would be fun for you to see more of a finished product versus just the very beginning. So instead of doing alla prima, we decided to do a painting a bit in layers. So this would be day two. This would be a second layer that we put on our paintings. Hydrangeas, which is very challenging flower to paint because you have tons of petals, tons of busyness and texture going on in the whole flower. And for those reasons, this is a great example to see the second step, how we unify some of the petals, how we unify the volume of the flower itself, and how we deal with compositional things. So tonight we have the lovely Erica Cootie that's with us, and Evie They will be back on screen in just a second. And we have everybody showing the image all together at one time. You can go and get reference images, just like everything. We have reference image shots of the verse on our From Life section website. All you do is click the link down in the description at YouTube, on YouTube, and there it will ask for your email. You submit your email and you'll have access to not only that one, but all of the painting from what we have done on all 4 reference images. So you already have your email in there. Obviously, you don't have to do it again, but that's how you access them. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and start it. We have multiple setups. Erica is painting a lovely hydrangea. Did I say earlier?
No, you said hydrangea.
Okay. We're not painting anise, we're painting hydrangeas. And then Evie and I are working on 2 different setups of lavender ones that came actually right out of our backyard. So we're going to get started. And please tell us where you're from, what's going on in your world and your painting journey, and ask us questions, tell us jokes. Enjoy being with us tonight. We're enjoying being in your studio, and we're glad with us in ours. All right, we're going to get going.
Louis, for some comments saying the audio has feedback riskily, but it sounds okay on my headphones. Now there's static.
Put on mute. All right, everyone, it's just a test to see if the echo is still there. Let us know if there isn't. Okay, everyone, and just test to see if there is still a reverb or echo. Let us know in the comments if I'm still having an echo. All right, everyone. Testing 1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
Well done, y'all.
All right, everyone. We're back. We are back. Sorry for all of the frustrations. Let me know if it sounds good, and we'll carry on. Thank you for your patience too, by the way.
We're getting some perfects. Brilliant. I could hear you just fine. Good. All right.
So my desktop Mac is starting to become in the geriatric stage of its life. So it's having a hard time.
As they do.
As they do. Yes, exactly. So there will be a new Mac in our future, not too long from now, I'm sure.
Well, we do have people joining us, so let me start from the top. So we have someone says hello from Brazil, Osvaldo. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, but thank you for joining us from Brazil. We have Daniel from Michigan. Let's see, we have Marie from New Zealand. We have our friend Alyssa from Australia. She says, hello, lovely East Oaks peeps from
Alyssa.
Australia. Let's see. I know Millie was here. She said it was 111 degrees
And
out.
it's just crazy.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which is
I was
way
watching
too
those
hot.
heat waves going through and just feeling for all of my Arizona friends and family.
We have Claudia from Argentina. We have Cove Silas. They say, hey, everyone, I've been looking forward to this session. How is everybody doing?
Oh, doing great now that the sound is better. Glad to have all of you here.
We also have Judith from Virginia. And we also have, I think it's Iona from Chicago, which I was just there. Hello.
Hey. Now I got to get back into like painting mentality. No,
Yeah, no more tech brain.
no more IT. So everyone's got to let us know what your summer plans are. Or you have any painting excursions you're doing? All the fun things.
We have a question from earlier for Lewis's painting. They're asking the double bloom on the bottom right, which is Lewis's painting. Is the lighter one the way you started and then developed to the more blue flower?
It is, however, the flower that is the larger one is more green and yellow in hue. But since the blue one is more of the focal point, I wanted to kind of get it started, and then y'all could see how I developed the other one. I'll still work on the blue one because I'm not done with it. So we'll kind of start there, but then we'll continue moving over to the other one. So, but yes, it's one of those things. The beautiful thing about at least our peony flower, or not peony, why am I keep saying that? Hydrangea flowers is that even when they start to get past their prime, they just fade into showing a bit of a greenish hue in their older period, and then they just stay that kind of color, which is nice because then you can dry them out and bring them inside, and they still hold some of their color, and they're really beautiful. So it's just one of the flowers that is a bit past its prime, kind of like my computer right now. But yes, that's kind of how I blocked it in. sort of a soft, large shape, trying to develop the overarching form of the cluster.
We're going to be changing one of the mics because there is a slight buzz in the background, so bear with us. Thank you. All right. We
Another
have
crisis
resolved
averted.
the buzzing.
Here you go.
All right. We did get a sweet comment from Alyssa. She said, saw your prompt on Instagram for Paying from Life. Woke up yesterday. So excited. Turned on the laptop. And then I realized I was 24 hours early.
Oh my goodness.
We appreciate your enthusiasm, even the day before.
Very true. Hopefully you're able to paint along with us too, Alyssa.
We have a comment from Cove. They're saying, I'm in British Columbia, Canada. We've had a really cold spring and only now is it starting to get hot. 111 in Arizona is crazy. I agree. I would not survive. Millie, you're stronger than I am, and I applaud you for that.
For all of our like British and international friends, we need to like figure out what the Celsius is for that.
Oh,
So-
gosh.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
So they can.
We have Emma here. It says 45 or something, which I believe you.
I believe that fact.
We also have Scott Jones joining. He says, "Hi, Millie and Cove. Fun recognizing people who are watching."
Hi, Scott.
Hello,
Glad
Scott.
you're part of our thing tonight.
I hope you're painting along, Scott, with your watercolors.
That's right. So everyone has to tell us what they've been up to lately and what fun summer plans they have so we can live vicariously through you. Tina just got back from Chicago. What were you there for, Tina?
We were there kind of for Father's Day weekend and also to get some wedding stuff done, wedding planning things. So got my dress fitting, got my our engagement pictures done. We went to the Chicago Art Museum, the Art Institute of Chicago, which I was actually really upset about because they did take down a few of my favorite paintings in the American art section. They took them down and they replaced them with modern paintings. I know, Erica, I know. And yeah, I was pretty upset. I was looking for, I believe the title is Elaine, and I forgot who paints it, but it's a woman and she's on a boat and these two men are rowing the boat and there's flowers everywhere and it's really, really gorgeous. And they took it down. Very sad. I don't know why. It's just not available. But yeah, that's what I was doing. And we also have a comment from Daniel saying, "Looks like a new easel," which I think he might be referring to Evie's because it might be looking the cleanest.
Yeah. I would still call this new. I think this is only like, gosh, maybe like the 6th time I've painted with it. I'm kind of surprised it's like actually as clean still as it is. Like I've gotten some smudges here and there, but it's how you break it in.
Right.
Yeah, I took it with us. It did really well. Last month, we all went to the coast and Alla Prima painted waves on the beach. And this easel did great. I was very happy with it. That was a fun trip.
That was a fun trip. Well, East Oaks planar outing.
Yeah, waves are not easy to paint.
Yeah, man. That model doesn't hold still.
We have a question from Iona. They're asking, how do you go about simplifying a shape as complex as a flower? How do you choose what to prioritize when there's so much detail to choose from? It's a
I
great
feel
question.
like that's a great question, Erica.
I think it's a great question to ask in general because with flower painting, I feel like that is like that kind of unification, understanding how to simplify and what to prioritize, where to start. Those are great questions because of the complexity of the subject. There's often so much information going on, whether it's so many colors, so many little flowers like we see here, a lot going on. So the way I begin is I
Erica,
simplify.
wait, before you go, make sure your mic is on. You sound a little quiet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I might have put it on mute. I'm sorry.
Good thing I didn't say anything of value yet. So
They could hear you, just not as
how about this?
much better.
Cool. So the way I would approach simplifying something like this is I would first conceptualize the whole hydrangea as a sphere. And so I'm looking at where the light is coming from, and I'm imagining how this would be if this were a sphere. So this is the shadow edge here. The shadow shape is down here. We have our transition here, our lightest lights in the middle. And then it slowly gets slightly darker as it turns into the background. So I think of the whole thing as a sphere, and then I basically choose a few priority like little clusters of flowers. So I chose a few on the edge here, a couple up here, some of the brightest ones in the middle as they transition into the shadow. And I make sure I kind of have a good understanding of those, and then I kind of imply the rest in between. And so if I get kind of the overall thing making sense, then you don't have to paint every little flower. You can just prioritize a few and then let your paint application imply the rest. And so it's a nice way of not feeling too overwhelmed with a subject as complex as this. But a lot of sphere conceptualization, a lot of squinting, a lot of stepping back and making sure that things are fitting in the whole, relating to the big impression and larger image. The way I started this painting was starting with the just general block in, and then I did a base layer that was just essentially a muted, warmer version of this sphere. And then I went in with the leaves in the background to help support the hydrangea. And then now that I have everything around it, now I'm working into the hydrangea itself. So that's my general process.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that was great. It's really fun to see, even in our block-in stages, how we decided to approach even simplification when we were working on unifying the sphere, because all of us did that. But you would notice at the end of the day, like even our approaches of how we did that part was unique and interesting and different. So, which made it a lot of fun. I mean, I guess it goes just in general with our PFLs, or anytime you watch artists paint, you'll notice that there's just different subtleties of how people do things just slightly differently.
Yeah, I think so far that's something I'm really enjoying personally, just getting to work on this next to the two of you is like seeing, even though we're painting not the same subject, but like subject matter wise, all the same thing, how our own kind of unique styles really start to come through during the process.
Mm.
Millie says, I love these paintings. They are so beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
We also have a comment from Fernando. He says, this is Fernando, met Lewis and Evie at the Portrait Society conference in Atlanta. First time on the channel, not painting along with you right now, but enjoying the Q&A.
Yay!
Yay, nice to see you here.
Hi,
Hear you
Fernando.
here. Thanks for joining us.
That's awesome.
Every time I find it so exciting that there are people tuning in from around the world.
Yes.
I think that's so cool. Said it before, I'll say it again.
I'll say it all the time.
Preach. I love it.
One thing with flower painting that I try to keep in mind for myself and just think is really important is that you don't have to include everything. And oftentimes less is more. Whenever I try to paint everything or be too literal, it just doesn't look very good. It doesn't get the feel of the flower.
Mm.
I end up getting caught up in things that I realize don't really matter, things like that. So it's a great exercise, even if you don't end up painting flowers as one of your professional things. It's a really useful exercise to paint flowers, to figure out, how do I simplify? How can I be delicate? How can I compress? How can I work with color? You know, things are great subject matter to paint.
We have a question for Lewis from Jan. Jan is asking, any tips for leaves? Yours seem to disappear into the background.
You know, I think that with leaves, a couple of things you should keep in mind is obviously, just in flowers in general, you need to keep in mind your edges, where there are softer and harder edges. As the leaf kind of comes towards you and away from you, you should soften or harden. But also, sometimes we make the value too bright because we're trying to be literally what we see, when in actuality, it is a relationship between the flower and the value of the leaf being a much lower value. The other thing is that whatever the color is that you think is the most chromatic color, you might want to add a little bit of red into your green, because green just out of the tubes are just far too strong, and they can dominate your painting if you're not careful. So I like to usually tell people, make sure that you spend some time testing out some red. So if I'm working with a warm green, I usually use I put a bit of a cool red into the color, and it seems to just bat it down just enough for it to not dominate. Then the values are low enough to where they almost meld into the background, almost because of the value alone. So that's another thing that I do think about when I'm painting leaves. Good question.
That also applies to plein air painting, when you're painting grass or trees or things like that.
100%. Good point. You'd just be amazed at how much variety there is in green.
I think
stuff.
our eyes see the most variety in green. Like there's something about that.
I think that I feel like I've heard that before. Or like we're able to interpret more variation more easily.
And so learning how to compress that quantity of information that we see can be a challenge.
That's one of the reasons why I've been telling Lewis and Erica the last 2 days, like, oh God, I hate blue. Which is one of the reasons why I'm actually like, I wanted to choose the blue hydrangeas to work from, because I personally find blue to be kind of an intimidating color, because my eyes tend to have more trouble picking up on the subtleties in that way. So I think that, you know, doing exercises like this that are very, very complicated forms with also varied local values and local hues, like there's a lot of blues and greens and pinks bouncing around along just with the like lavender blue color. I think it's a really good way to kind of just like train your eye to not be lazy.
Well, Jan says, great leaf tips, Lewis, thanks. And Cove also says that is really helpful information about flowers. I struggle with simplifying a lot.
Yeah, it's so difficult to simplify with flowers. I mean, that's why, you know, Erica said it so well, why you start more with like the spherical nature of even if it's like a rose or something that doesn't feel like it has a spherical nature to it, everything has a volume. And to think about the volume as a whole and trying to conceptualize that volume before you move forward, because it's just going to help you so much in and orienting the rest of the petals when you start working a little bit more in the weeds of it. So
honestly, I kind of wish while we were arranging our florals yesterday, I think I'm kind of making a mental note to myself or to all you guys out there that if you are going to try to paint hydrangeas, it's probably really helpful to actually like take a second to look underneath at the flower at like the internal structure of how the stem breaks apart and like distributes the little like sub
Grasses, yeah.
florets around it. Because I think, you know, looking at the surface, it's like you can kind of imagine the internal structure of it, but I think that actually looking at it can also help you to kind of like sculpt it out and figure out that structure.
So funny. This is, you know, for anyone who does portraits or any other subject matter, and then you try a new subject matter, you just realize it's just it's a whole different ballgame when you're trying. Like you're obviously, if you've got experience with value and edge control and all that kind of stuff, that can help you. But at the end of the day, painting flowers is just, you know, I tell people it's kind of like, you know, you can play poker. Like poker is just a hierarchy of what cards beat what, but there's like 20, 30 different games you can play in the world of poker. And so it's one of those things, they all have different math and different strategies of how you play the game. And so it's kind of like, I feel like doing floral painting can help your other fields.
100%. But
at the same time, it is absolutely a unique set of things you've got to think about. So but don't be daunted. It's still a lot of fun, and you know, it'll, like you just said, it'll help all your other fields.
Worth the struggle.
I was just going to say, sometimes it's worth just diving right into something really complex,
Right?
As a way of, like, if you need to learn how to simplify, paint something really complicated.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
It is kind of refreshing as somebody that like pretty much never paints florals. I don't know. I'm a little bit intimidated by this whole process myself, but I'm also finding that it's really refreshing actually to kind of think about this entire painting process through a different sort of procedural lens. That contrasts to portrait painting in a way where it's like, okay, you kind of have the freedom to like fudge the placement of a petal here and there. And it's sort of like, can actually be kind of like a little bit more meditative in that way, where it's like, okay, if you screw up this one brush stroke, then everything is anatomically off or something.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about anatomy with this, which is nice.
I love the freedom to make design choices that if I wanted to lift a leaf or move a petal, or, you know, I can more easily move things around for the feel of it. I don't feel like I have to be too literal. Not that you don't do that with portraiture, it's just a different game.
It feels, yeah, you can play around a lot. Like, not like it's like lower stakes, because it's still a lot.
Because there's still patterns that it has to work within.
Yeah. I feel like so much of this is just pattern recognition.
Maybe that's why my brain likes it so much.
Maybe it is.
It's like, ooh, puzzles.
We have another question for Louis. Someone's asking, what green do you use for the leaves?
I used a sap green dark, and then I used magenta to counteract the green, and I used Naples yellow to bring the green value up to light. So the sap green dark is a very dark, kind of a cold green. At least this one is. This one's made by Michael Harding. It's permanent sap green. And I tested a few greens. I even made a few just with blue and yellow, and just found I liked the accuracy of this combination. So yeah, it was good. Good question too. It's one of those things where sometimes you can make the color with the colors that you normally have on your palette, but sometimes there's an easier way to make the color. And when you're working with something that's as complex as this, it's nice to be able to have something that's easy to mix.
I feel like that with a limited palette. You know, it's like you could use all the colors and be accurate, but by limiting your palette, sometimes it's nice because it just helps you focus on the relationships.
Yep. It's a good point. And value.
Exactly.
Well, speaking about a limited palette, we have a question from Jan. They're asking, what do you think of using black and yellow to make a green?
I think in the right context, it's a great green.
Excellent.
I think it makes a great green. I don't have black on my palette for this painting, but because I choose to make one with transparent red oxide and ultramarine, because I like the warmth and transparency that I can get. But if you were to use black, I think, again, it makes a great green. With like cad yellow, it just makes it can be really nice. Like surprisingly chromatic.
Yeah.
And yet muted enough where it doesn't feel acidic. So.
Millie is also saying, I am mainly a portrait painter. I find that painting flowers is the hardest thing ever, but it helps me tremendously with my brushstrokes, color observation, and so much more. I consider it a must. Very good points, Millie.
Yes, that was a good point. If the more you do in different fields, the more you'll grow in the field that you enjoy. So for those reasons, I tell people you should try all of those things. So commend the people that are actually putting that into practice.
Plein air painting, or landscape painting at least, I think it's another one of those things where even if it's not something you want to do professionally in your work, but it's such a great thing to do, to have to be able to go outside, compress all of that complexity, and then make design decisions with light that's changing constantly. Like it's such a like kind of diving right into complexity again. Like you have to make a design call, and or else your painting won't happen.
Yep.
So you don't have the luxury of waiting. Sometimes it's good to be thrown right into it.
Jan says, the flowers don't complain if they're cold or hot or show up late or not at all. It's very true.
That's very, very true.
I like that.
They do move around on you, though.
They do. They can be very dramatic.
Don't some flowers like close at night and only
Yes.
open? Yeah,
Yes,
that
they
must
do.
be like
I was painting anemones and I put them in the fridge at night and they completely closed. And then were opening as I was painting them, kind of turned. And then by the end of the day, closed again. Like,
Wow.
okay.
that's so cute.
They
They go
did
to
the
sleep.
whole like arabesque.
The whole thing.
You know.
They have a little night routine. They do their morning routine. They open up.
I think ranunculus do that too,
Oh
where
yeah.
I've painted those and then you're painting during the day and then you realize something's changing. They're starting to close back up again. Like, okay, I'm not going to paint you in this position anymore.
All right, let's switch over to this other flower.
Liad is saying during a solar eclipse they close up too.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I mean, one of the many reasons I love floral painting is getting to know the character of each one. And then you learn by painting a lot of them, then you kind of predict how they're going to move and open.
Mm.
And it's fun then compositionally when you're painting, you can kind of like, you're doing a bit of a dance with it and
Yeah.
anticipating its movement, working with it and how you're placing in your composition can be very fun.
I love that. Like you have to like learn the soul of the plant you're
Yeah.
painting. Yeah. I feel like you could have been a botanist in another life, Erica.
Absolutely.
Maybe I was back in the day.
Jan says, I painted an artichoke once, but my drawing was consistently off till I realized the choke is a flower and it was moving. I didn't know that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I always watch like cooking shows and they talk about like fancy restaurants that serve sun chokes,
Mm.
which are, I guess, like related. I
Mm.
don't know. I feel like an artichoke would be really rhythmically fun to paint just with all the,
Mhm.
are they leaves? The like spines on an artichoke? Yeah, I feel like that would actually be a really fun form.
We have a question from Sandra, I believe for everyone. What was the black that you used for the background?
So I used a combination of transparent red oxide and ultramarine blue.
I used the exact same thing.
I used transparent brown, ultramarine, manganese, and quinacridone.
It's a very complicated black.
Yeah, I wanted it to have like a kind of purple vibration. So I did, I put that, I snuck that quinacridone in there because it's largely transparent and able to kind of shift it to a warm sort of burgundy black
Mm.
that I thought looks really nice with these blues.
We have a few more people joining. We have Emira saying hi from Sri Lanka. And we also have a question from Iona. They're asking, do you ever worry about flower paintings looking saccharine? And if so, how do you counteract that?
I think about that all the time.
Wow.
Part of it for me has been my color choices and learning where to put my most chromatic elements and then where to dull it down. So that way the whole thing doesn't feel very chromatic. It's very deliberate what areas have chroma and then what is more muted. The second part is I probably steer away from like a lot of pinks and yellows dominating most of the composition and like beiges. I think for me, that's where it starts to lean a bit sweet just for my own taste. And so I try to make sure that I counter it with a compliment.
Mm-hmm. Also, just practicing tonality, like you're saying, with a limited color palette can help you not have to think too hard about that. So there's so much magic in a limited color palette when you're working in this world. So that's one of the ways I think it really helps.
I also think if you find paintings that you think are really saccharine, like where you feel like, oh, that's just not the vibe that I'm going for, like really analyze them, like take some time to really study them and look at what their color choices are, what like why it's feeling like that.
Mm-hmm.
The paintings you don't like are just as useful as the ones that you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I started with a white panel, and I usually don't, but I didn't I didn't think about toning it earlier, and so that's what I started with. So it's amazing how like when you first start out, you have to really work on like toning and covering everything so that you can see kind of what colors really you're going to sing at the right value, because sometimes you can have this beautiful color, you put it up there and it just doesn't looks like way too dark or looks really bad. And then you realize later it's just because you're painting on a very bright canvas and you just needed to bring everything down. So that's just something to think about. At least I think about it when I'm working with, when you're working with something that is as vibrant as some of these colors are. Also, to go back to the saccharine thing, is that's one of the reasons why I decided to make this other flower less blue, because I thought that the balance between sort of the greenish colors that in the petals of the one behind it allowed for the other one to really sing, and helped kind of create a more of a balanced approach to the painting. I also can play with like an idea of like these more pearly colors being in this back one versus the front one being more about its violet hues to lavender hues.
We have a question from Cove. They're asking, do you have any advice on composition, particularly with still life? I've heard things about having a good dark/light pattern or using an S-curve, etc.
Composition, I think across the board, there's so much you could have a full 5 weeks on learning composition. But I think that some of the basics are, I like things to kind of almost go off the page or go off the page. I think that really helps, or the canvas. but also creating a balance, but not by creating something central, maybe by creating counterbalance ideas. So like, for example, I have the vase offset from the center, and it's counterbalanced by this large flower to the right, which is also counterbalanced by this smaller cluster to the left. And so then the leaves are going off in different points on the sides. So this leaf is coming off on this edge, and this leaf is coming off on that edge, and they kind of create this nice diagonal that flows through the piece. But then there's a sort of other diagonal that's created that's a much softer form going this way. So I always try to think about how I can create sort of a kinetic energy by creating a balance within things that are offset each other. That's one small element of composition. There's just so much. You're right. Negative space and positive space, figure ground relationship of the two, all of those things matter.
I think one of the tricky things with composition is that once you find a rule, you can find something else that breaks it beautifully.
Yes.
And so one rule is don't put anything smack dab in the center. But then a lot of compositions have that, and they do it on purpose because it creates this like intensity of the thing that's put in the middle.
100%.
The same thing with symmetry.
Radial compositions that are, central symmetry. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I'm working with a pretty radial composition right now, but I feel like you can do that and pull it off by like creating directional lines of movement with your subject, where it's like, okay, I've got one leaf kind of off leading this way, and then another leaf leading your eye the other way. So your eye is still moving all across the surface. You're not like getting stuck in a black hole.
I think the key is first establishing some sort of abstract movement, whether that's an S-curve, something radial, I think triangles, whether they're just different shapes and proportions of triangles, that's really useful. Some sort of abstract shape. And then that might be your main thing. And then secondary is finding deviations within that. So if you're doing something symmetrical, finding how things are not quite symmetrical within that bigger structure. Same thing with something radial or something central. Like right now I have this kind of diagonal here of how I'm placing my hydrangea. But I want to make sure I have some zigzags that kind of cross the other way, so it doesn't feel too static. So you want that main energy of the first thing, but then your secondary elements are kind of contrasting or contradicting that first thing. And then the combination of all of your elements can make something interesting. I think, just like we were saying before about looking at paintings that you like, taking a minute to write down what you feel from them, and then looking at their abstract design and trying to decode why you feel the way that you feel from the abstract elements. That can be a good exercise.
Absolutely. Anytime you're going to a painting and you're saying why, and try to de-engineer a few things from it, that's going to be really, really helpful.
I think that's also something like really exciting about painting flowers and like the psychology of flowers, because I think it's one of those like tropes of like, as we talked about, like being kind of like that saccharine, sweet, feminine thing. And some of my favorite floral paintings are like really, really violent, and they're like kind of just unexpectedly like, wow, there's so much happening here, and there's so much drama, and really, really intense kind of psychological complexity. And it gives me like a image in my head of like, what kind of like motions must the painter have been like making and acting out while they were making this. And I think that's a fun thing that like can kind of play into the psychology of it as well. Is like it is such a physical process of like, oh, you have to like bend your arm like backwards up this way just to get the right stroke. Like I see Erica doing that all the time where I peek my head in and she's like, you know, but it's like, it's really cool to see that.
Sometimes just moving your brush the way the hairs are not supposed to go.
Yeah.
At an
Yeah,
angle
yeah.
creates the best mark.
It's true.
We have a question from Marcus. He's asking any advice on building a habit of painting all the time / drawing all the time. Do you guys have any habits in this regard? The world just keeps me so busy.
I'd say Tuna is really good at habits. Good habits.
I feel like I do have a bit of experience balancing having a job and then also painting on the side, because before, I mean, currently right now I'm painting full time, but before I would work part time and then I would paint on my days off and after work on the weekends, like whenever I had time. And I mean, the most important thing to have is just dedication. You have to be extremely self-reliant and extremely self-motivated because no one's going to be grading you. Like you're not turning in an assignment. This is all on you to do. So, you know, they say it takes 21 days to form a habit. So just set aside a little bit of time, even if it's only 15 minutes to do a little drawing. If you can do it, you know, in between jobs, when you get home from work. Our good friend Emily Fossum does a really, really great job of balancing having 2 kids, taking them to gymnastics, taking them to baseball games, and still finding time to do her commissions and to work on her own personal drawing. So it can be done. It's just a matter of managing your time. And I'm a huge believer in planners. So, you know, having a to-do list is also really helpful for me. Just make sure that you're being hard on yourself is not the right term, but make sure you hold yourself accountable to it. That's my advice.
Good advice.
And Marcus also says, wonderful paintings. By the way, I'm working on sunflowers, mostly because my
Hey.
local flower shop had some really nice ones.
Tell you what, there's some really beautiful sunflower paintings out there. I was gawking over one a few days ago. I can't remember the guy's name on Instagram, but I'll look it up here. He does these. They're just like old,
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking
craggy,
about.
you know, large sort of seed base, and then the petals are really sort of tiny and dead.
Mm-hmm.
But the way he paints it is just so beautiful. You're just like, oh, I could look at
Like the
this.
sunflower's dying, but the painting is so alive. Like
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
super cool.
Is that Mark Ryder, maybe?
Might be. Even if you said his name, I might not
Yeah, I'm
remember.
not sure.
So I'll have to look it up.
When they should be in season right now, right? I
They
think.
are. I
Or
picked
at least
some
here
up
in North Carolina. Yeah.
recently.
There's a really big sunflower field, public sunflower field that grows every summer that's not too far from us.
Oh
We
yeah.
go
Yeah.
planer paint.
Is that Gertrude?
Dorothea Dix
Dorothea
Park
Dix, that's it.
in Raleigh. Yeah, the city of Raleigh has a public planning commission that a few years ago started planting just huge amounts of sunflowers in a public park because they use them. They take like all the spent flower heads and I think they use them in like ethanol production.
Oh yeah.
I'm
they
pretty
might.
sure that's what it is. How they do that, I have no clue, but it's something like that.
We have an interesting question from Daniel. He's asking, do having your fingernails painted have any influence on color in your paintings? Also, just a reason to show off your manicure.
I never really paid attention to it. It does kind of go really well with this, though.
It does.
I don't think I've ever thought about that before. That's, yeah. Maybe we'll have to do a test.
I love if you're at home and you're just like, okay, I've got to find the perfect color. And then you come here and you're like, oh, this whole thing? I just kind of threw them on.
Must be some sort of subconscious connection with the color choices that I'm making.
We have a question from Sandra. She's asking, do you think that those who are learning should focus on only one subject? I keep jumping from portraits to animals to flowers to landscapes, and I feel like I'm not getting better on anything.
I actually do believe you should focus on a main subject. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't use the other things to practice opportunities or have opportunities to practice to help with your main subject. But I do think it is helpful to isolate one thing first and feel like you can get accomplished at that one thing and then move on to the next. So, but that's what has helped me. And I know that people here, at least that advice I think has helped people here get good at one thing. And I think it's more about focus. It's not that you can't have other interests. It's more about intentional practice on one thing that helps you move faster because you're focusing on it and your brain isn't jumping around from one thing to the next. So
I'm just reflecting on my own training, and at Florence Academy, we divided our time between the model room and casts at the beginning, essentially. So you could divide that into figure and still life effectively. Both of those things, though, were like the main idea was understanding your bigger concepts like proportion, values, edges, some anatomy, obviously, for figure, but just getting an understanding of the language. And then once you have an understanding of the language, then you are, like, we didn't do portraits really until I think second year, and they were drawn. So the point of my story is that you're kind of starting with fundamentals. I think still life is a great place to start. And then once you get kind of comfortable with handling your paint, handling your materials, understanding some of the basics, then you can kind of expand from there and maybe focus on a subject that you really are interested in.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think starting with still lifes is probably the best route to go. And I feel like a lot of people usually want to start with the portraits, which I'm also the same way because that's usually what you might be the most interested in. But all of that information that you learn from the still life painting can be translated to portraits. So I think that it might be best to buckle down on the still lifes because they will translate into other subjects.
Some like non-perishable still life objects that you can just take your time understanding.
And they don't move on you.
Exactly. And then whatever medium you're using, whether it's drawing or painting, whatever you're getting comfortable with, then start doing some sketches in the subject that you're liking. For example, if you like portraits and you're starting just with drawing, just doing some sketches of friends or family, just kind of in the same wheelhouse of what you've already been practicing. And that way you are slowly kind of expanding your breadth, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And I feel it's like one of those things where like the more you kind of force yourself to do it, the more you learn to enjoy it.
Mhm.
Or at least it certainly can be. That's honestly how it was for me in still lifes. I was, like Tina mentioned, like way more interested in portraits. But after doing many of them, I actually really love painting still lifes.
We have a comment from Joe. She's saying, I have 3 hydrangea plants that are almost blossoming. I'm so excited. Just a few more days. Well, if you end up painting them, you should tag us on Instagram so we can see how your hydrangea painting is out.
Yes.
Yeah, I wonder because I mean, obviously they come in kind of like blue and white. They also come in pink, don't they?
Oh, yeah.
You got a lot of fun different colors to paint with.
Yeah, you can get some that are actually blue and pink.
Oh my
Like,
God.
yeah, they where they're having an identity crisis and can decide what they want to
They're
be.
literally all the colors, all in one bush.
It depends on the pH of the soil, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Science.
Science, people.
I thought that was about to be a Breaking Bad reference.
I do know what you're talking
Louis.
about.
I actually do really love that show. Though.
It's really good. Yeah.
We have an update from the rumor mill from Jan. She's saying, has anyone heard the rumor they're discontinuing quinacridone? Hope it's not true. I haven't heard anything about that.
You know, I did read something about that.
Really?
I
wonder
think
if it's
Oh
true.
no! Really? I
Where
haven't
did I
heard
read it?
anything.
I think I'm
When
part
we
of
say
some...
we're just talking about everyone.
Huh?
Like all brands forever?
I don't
brands.
know. Maybe.
Quinacridones.
Oh jeez.
Where'd you read it, Eric?
I think it was the Facebook group for natural pigments.
Oh.
Or like painting best practices. I think there was,
Let
I
me
have to
see.
like deep dive. So I don't even know if they were the ones who posted it. I think somebody posted it.
I'll Google it.
Nice.
I wonder. Yeah, I'd be curious to hear what the reasoning
I'm
is.
magenta. No. I'm so loyal to it.
Gotta
I do
stock
know,
up now.
I do know that George O'Hanlon, when he first started, he really didn't want to do quinacridones. So just he felt like there's plenty in the market, and you know so maybe it's just a natural pigments thing. So I was actually really surprised when I found out that he was starting to do quinacridone colors. So, because I think at the beginning he was branding himself as things that were unavailable,
Okay. Yeah.
and so
Or like rare historical
Yeah,
pigments.
yes,
Yeah.
I hope that's the case. Where he's just like, I don't want to make this anymore.
yeah. It would be crazy to think that unless there's something incredibly unhealthy for either the environment or people
Yeah, I was
in
gonna
the
say, some
quinacridone
sort of
color,
sourcing issue.
you know.
Well, and then aren't paint companies currently working on commercial production for that new blue that was discovered
That I don't know.
a few
about.
years ago? The like it's a code. It's like M17 or something. If anybody out there knows what I'm talking about, I'd be curious if y'all know anything. I think it was like this new blue pigment that was synthesized accidentally during a I don't know if it was a clinical trial or a medical study or just what, but they made it on accident
That's the best.
in like 2017 maybe.
That's pretty cool.
So I haven't found anything about the quinacridone discontinuing besides like Golden, the brand Golden has been discontinuing some of their stuff. But Jan is saying that car manufacturers no longer want to use it. So the rest of us won't get it either. So I guess there's just like less of a supply nowadays.
Yeah, that has happened many times in history where paint companies don't use something, so we can't. There's not enough for it to be available for us to use. So we're kind of at the mercy remember
stock up on my
I remember
magenta.
George talking about that in one of his lectures, was talking about how largely we have to thank industry that allows for us to have some of the colors that we do. But also we can thank industry for all the colors we can't get to use, including at one point and several times, lead was almost, lead white was discontinued because the whole paint companies wouldn't allow it. And then the law changed because they were like, no lead paint, period. And then Georgia Hanlon and many people in the conservatory or conservators guild or whatever it is, campaigned and lobbied for it to at least be kept for artists to use. The things you don't even know about that are happening behind the closed doors.
It would be cool to be a
affect
part
you.
of like those conversations, or at
I
least
could totally see you in there.
be like, what's
But
going on?
No.
Let's go rescue
No.
some colors.
You can't do that.
It's just me being like, no.
Yeah, no. Quinacridones?
Not allowed.
I want it.
They're going to stay.
I think I make some strong arguments.
Yeah, I think you do.
You could do it, Erica.
I would definitely want you on my team.
This is my color.
Why?
Why do I sound like?
No, not you. Yeah, that's not a reference to you.
No, I was just,
Why do you
I
say-
would be sassy about it. Like, don't get rid of my quinacridone.
I can't see you doing the no part though. Like, no.
Man. There is a lot happening here.
It's about 7:30-ish. So
Okay.
just so everyone knows, we're about halfway. We also have a comment from someone with the name just Autopsy, which I really enjoy. They say, hi, so nice to see you paint again. A question. Do you guys know artists that have a second full-time job? I am a doctor who has been traveling with my canvases, really struggling to paint simultaneously.
Ooh, those are two
That
major
sounds-
occupations.
Yes.
Yeah.
I understand the username now.
One of my good friends is a teacher, and she also paints and is a mom. So
Yeah.
it's hard for her with prioritizing everything and finding ways to balance it all, but people do it.
Was Ashwini, wasn't she like an engineer of some sort?
Yep.
And
was.
I think now she might just be painting, but there are a good amount of artists who had really great scientific based jobs who have since left the field and just started to do art.
Yeah, another friend of mine works for Apple and is trying to shift her career over. And all of these people do it more to the effect of it's a side hustle until it's not. And then when they feel that they're comfortable moving over completely, at least this applies to my friend that is a software engineer, is that they, once they have reached a certain level that they feel like or sales that they can switch over, they intend to. So
I did that to some extent when I first started painting more. I was working part-time as a bartender, part-time as a textile designer, and then painted whenever I could. So probably a different routine than being a doctor, certainly. But yeah, I think it certainly is possible.
I will say I know many, many, many physicians that are also painters, and carve out time to paint. So. So I would encourage it.
And I feel like in our field, there's kind of, I don't know, like a weird, not stated taboo around having a job that's not painting. Like people kind of don't talk about it, but there's really nothing wrong with painting on the side and not making a career from it. If you just want to do it as a hobby, or if you're in the route of attempting to make it into your profession, treating it as a job until it pays you back. Like there's nothing wrong with that. And I want people to talk about it more instead of kind of romanticizing the whole painting as a career profession, because it's not for everyone and it's hard.
Actually, years ago, I was having this conversation over coffee with Daniela Stone, where we were talking about exactly that art, depending on who you are, make sure that you're not using the expectations of what you see art to be or what people are creating their career to be yours. Sometimes you want to do it for therapy, and that doesn't mean you need to make it a career. Sometimes it could be something that you need to get something from your inside out onto the canvas, and maybe it's not meant to be seen. Maybe it's meant for you to be the viewer, the creator. And so, but to make sure that you're thinking exactly like Tina is saying, make sure that you're thinking about your art as not the expectation that it should be, an occupation, but that you're thinking about it more in the sense of where am I finding joy doing this, and how do I lean into that exactly specifically? So, otherwise you might find you hate it. I tell the story from my past, which is when I was in college, I actually tried my hand at being a professional poker player, and I did it for about 6 months. And I had a whole spreadsheet. I traveled to different tournaments and did really well. However, I ended up hating it because I found out that all of my weekends were spent at casinos, and usually around people that weren't. I love being around my friends, and these people were definitely just not the type of people that I would usually have as my friends. There was a huge demographic of people, don't get me wrong, that were there, but they weren't my buddies. And I found myself on the weekends just being there. And I was just starting to date my wife at the time, and I was missing being with her. And you're eating buffet food all the time. And you never know if people are being truthful or real. And so after a while, I was like, this isn't at all what I was thinking it was going to be. So I stopped. And just like, this is supposed to be just for fun. And now, I still every now and again play with friends in our neighborhood and play in fun tournaments. And that's all it is. Just every now and again, just a fun little hobby.
We have another comment from Autopsy, whose name is Maya. Maya is saying, I'm going to use my anatomy skills. I understand science can help with understanding the form and figure. Thanks for the great advice. I agree. Autopsy is a nice username, but I don't enjoy them much. I can understand that.
Thanks
Yeah,
for the comment. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just going to say, I think honestly, being in a medical field actually gives you a really unique opportunity to approach an art practice in a different way that, not a lot of people can approach it through that academic lens. And being able to see like the value of the relationship that these two fields can have with one another, I think you could actually end up making some really amazing work that is really uniquely you.
Yeah. There's so much science in the world of art, Another fun fact is I actually was considering going to medical school, and then my painting career took off when I was in college, and I decided, no, I think I'm going to do this instead. So took the MCAT and everything, had a biochem degree, and then just changed course. So glad I did. There's not to say that there's anything wrong with the medical field. I love the medical field. Just putting out there. Just saying that I knew.
So you
what,
hate doctors is what I'm understanding.
Yes, I hate doctors. I wanted to be one. But luckily, I was able to do another one of my loves. I always used to say art was my passion, but medicine or science was my fascination. And at the end of the day, I had to choose which one was going to be the profession.
Millie says, I have met a few doctors that comment that painting is harder than taking their board exams. Which I love that. And Maya says, good for you, Louie. I think you made the right choice.
Thank you. Luckily, I'm so proud of my brothers. One of them is a doctor and the other one's an attorney. And I always say, I'm so glad they became those so that I wouldn't have to be. I have somebody to ask legal advice to and medical questions to. And they're both great at what they do and love it.
We have a few good questions from Sandra. Sandra Lopez about social media. She's asking, how important is it to dedicate time to social media to get known as opposed to just practicing and getting better and things will happen naturally? I might answer this because I tend to get nerdy about social media stuff. So I would say they're both equally important, and I think you need to be doing both, practicing and getting your work better, but also continuing to post while you're on that journey, because people do find that fascinating and they do want to support you in your journey. Like, people want to get to know you and they want to learn about you and they want to learn about your struggles and your triumphs, and they really like seeing that whole journey. So I would say spend as much time as you can on social media. If that's only posting, once a week or, maybe 2 times a week, I would say try and stick to a consistent schedule, because the whole algorithm does reward consistency. And another part of Sandra's question was, should we post work that is suboptimal just to keep posting frequently? Or is it best to just post paintings, even if it takes 3 months to finish each one? I would say post whatever you can, but I would not recommend waiting that long to post in between each one, just because the algorithm isn't going to be pushing it and people might not see it, which is the whole other reason why you should start a newsletter. But that's a whole other topic for another day. But another thing that you can do is, if you're finding that you're finishing only one painting every 3 months, find out how you can turn that one painting into multiple pieces of content. So you can just post a still image of your finished painting. You can also post a still image of details, the work in progress. You can do a reel of the process, things like that. You could just have to get creative with finding ways that you can reuse one piece of artwork.
Tina's really good at that stuff. So I'm definitely not the person to ask there because I don't do a whole lot of social media. And I need to.
I think it's really fun. I am also the person, I had a WordPress blog when I was 8 years old about Club Penguin. So I may just have been born like this.
Tell you the second flower is harder because there's so many color shifts, even in the locally, but also in the shadows and light, which I love. But they're you have to find ways to simplify.
Is there a reason why you started with the flower on the left?
Yeah, it was just kind of was because it was the focal point, and I thought it would be good for people to see what direction I was going to go with it. But aside from that, there wasn't any major strategy.
We have a comment from Marcus. They're saying, I'm following the advice of painting many, many small pieces to learn from, generally 6x8 right now, which is a good idea. I also started just doing 5x7 color studies.
That is awesome. And yeah, fail small.
Mm-hmm.
Fail forward and fail small. You'll get so much out of it that way.
We have another question from Sandra. She's asking, what does it mean to be an in-resident artist? There is a local association here with an in-resident artist, but I never understand what that means. I only know medical residency. It's a good question.
It is a good question, and honestly, I think it means something different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
For us here, it is an artist who is one of our daily painters in our studio, who basically pay rent to be in our studio space, and because I also do mentorships where we have like a mentee, but they'll come in, about once a week or once every other week and paint along with us. So, but the ones that are here are actively pursuing the profession of being an artist. And the reason they're like a part of what we're doing here is because that's like the goal of East Oaks in our residency program, is to try to help artists have space and an environment that is conducive to helping them succeed the best they can.
And I'm sure it's different with every program. So you might want to check with your local association and see what they require, because I know sometimes you have to apply and you might need to have like a letter of recommendation, you might have to fill out some forms or maybe write like an essay or a paragraph or something. So it just depends on each program. It's definitely not like a regulated thing.
Yeah. And some people get it confused that like that means that people are living here. They're not. They have their own space and living elsewhere, and they just come here to work.
Yeah, some residency programs might have like housing available
Yeah.
where you would live there, but
Those are usually shorter term.
yeah, that's true. Emma said those are usually shorter terms as well.
And honestly, it's a goal that East Oaks eventually would have sort of residential locations for people to stay and live as a part of it. But at this stage, that is not where we are yet.
The paintings are looking so beautiful. Wow.
It really is so much fun.
I've heard that in a while.
Yeah, I know. It's been since like October since you've heard that probably.
So much fun.
This is so much fun.
We haven't had fun since October.
It's definitely what it sounded like.
No, we have fun every day.
We have a question from Millie. She says, what is your opinion about limited palettes? This was back when we were talking about the quinacridone being discontinued.
I think they're great. I think they are a great place to start when you're on your painting journey. And so that can just be, for example, black, white, and like raw umber. That's like our grisaille palette from Florence Academy. And then we expanded to black, English red, yellow ochre, and white. And that's a very kind of neutral, limited palette, but you can get a lot of skin tones with that. And then even our full palette when we were at the Academy was just black, cobalt blue, English red, vermilion, yellow ochre, and white. And by limiting your palette like that, you really understand the character of the pigments you're working with. And then you are having to focus on the relationships that you're creating using those pigments. So value relationships and color relationships. And you're focusing less on color matching and more on creating the color, temperature, and value relationships. I think that it's a very important skill to have, that when you do expand your palette, you then can use your knowledge from having a limited palette. And that way you're very purposeful with your color choices and where you're putting things. So I think it's great. Every time I'm doing the portrait painting from life sessions, I try to limit my palette I start with a limited palette and then I'll kind of deliberately add certain colors if I need to, depending on the setup. And it's a great way to just kind of keep focused on the essentials. Plus it does help with color harmony and things like that. It makes it a little bit easier to have a more harmonious painting, again, because you're focusing on relationships. I always think of kind of one of the mantras that we would use at schools, like value does all the work and color takes all the credit. And so I think that using a limited palette helps you focus on your priorities. because no matter what palette you use, it still needs to work.
Yeah. I think I talk even less when I'm painting flowers than I do when I'm portraits, because I'm just like concentrating so much.
So focused. Good job, you guys.
Woo! Go team, go!
Millie says, "Thank you, Erica. That is brilliant advice. Thank you very much."
Happy to help.
Erica's good at that. She's got good, brilliant advice.
Thanks, guys.
Guys!
Keep it coming.
Petals, petals, and more petals.
Yep.
Gonna be dreaming about lavender and yellow, green petals when I sleep tonight.
You're probably not wrong. Although it might be a dream or it might be
A nightmare. I'll let you know in the morning
yeah, we'll see.
which one it became.
So now that we're kind of rounding on the last hour for the paintings, what are you all thinking about how this is going to progress? Are you thinking you're going to be able to finish it tonight, or is there going to be another day ahead of you tomorrow?
I think there's going to be another day ahead of me tomorrow. But I'm thinking about keeping everything unified, thinking about my edges, but also at the same time, sort of shifting, I might even soften edges tonight to even like set up for tomorrow to keep going with it.
Yes, I think I will probably continue on this tomorrow. For example, I didn't finish out this leaf for sure. Want to finish that one. Plus, as much as I try to keep things unified, inherently there's going to be some areas that are hard to, or that I broke up too much. And so what's really nice is when it dries, then you can scumble on top of it or push and pull subtly within the areas that you've painted and enhance the light effect. And so that's something nice about when you're able to let the paint dry, kind of push different effects that you might not necessarily be able to do when you're working wet and wet a la prima style.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely gonna work on this tomorrow. I'm really having a lot of fun with it, honestly. But I think tomorrow I'd like to work on refining some of my edge work, and by that I mean softening a lot of my edge work. And I also really have neglected the leaves pretty much entirely this session. So I want to make sure that I get everything just kind of to a level of completion that I'm satisfied with.
One thing I want to make sure I do finish by the end of today is most of the petals, at least like where they're placed and how they're shaped. And I don't want to have to do any major repainting or anything like that tomorrow. I'm observing my flower and it is starting to slowly split. It's doing okay. It's holding up pretty well, but I can see it's starting to fade. And so I don't want to have to paint or try to kind of force something that's kind of wilting and rework that into something where it's not that kind of energy. So I'll try to get most of it to like an energy where I'm happy with it, at least the pedal wise.
Erica's about to go back to Italy for a little while.
Ah, that is true. My so I teach for the Florence Academy's master's program, and my students have their third and final summer, and so they'll be graduating this summer. So I'm excited to work on their theses, projects with them, and graduate them. It'll be exciting.
It will be exciting.
Have you ever worked with a graduating class before, or is this going to be your first one?
So my teaching experience is mostly with workshops, and there's a lot of overlap with the material that we teach for the master's programs and then what we run over in the workshops. But I haven't graduated a class yet, so I'm excited.
Yay. It'll be fun.
And most of my students I taught online, so I'm excited to actually meet them in person. So that'll be
That
cool.
will be cool.
Are they going to do a little ceremony for them?
We will, yeah.
Aw.
Do they get like a cap and gown
They
situation?
do.
Aw, that's cute.
That would be nice. So that's what I've been up to in the studio recently. I've been working on some demo stuff so I can have those as references for the students.
Nice.
I recently finished a larger floral piece, 14 by 18, which for me is larger. And so going back now to site size still life painting has been a great way of kind of reorienting my drawing skills.
Yeah.
So it's been good.
Everyone's quiet when it
I
comes
know,
to
I'm
painting
sorry, yeah.
flowers.
Crunch time.
Need to get a karaoke box in here.
I'm not sure about that.
Say karaoke.
What, are you scared?
I am
Yes.
scared of karaoke. Yes, I'm terrified of
Oh,
karaoke.
wow. I would have thought you would have been the first one up.
Oh, No, because all of my friends are professional musicians.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
Can't do it.
that makes sense.
Well, we're not professional musicians,
right.
so we
That's
might be the
fair.
right audience for you.
I think we're the perfect audience for you.
I walked into that one. Do you like karaoke, Lewis?
I have enjoyed it several times. I have not done it a lot, but what times I have done it, it was fun.
What was
So-
your go-to karaoke song?
That's a good question. I have to think about that for a second because I'm not really even sure. I don't even remember what I sang that day.
Hollaback Girl.
Oh yeah,
I like it for
nice.
sure.
I like
That's
it.
that's Lewis right there.
You know me.
I remember at one point you said that "Be Our Guest" was your
Oh yes,
karaoke
yes.
song.
I can sing most any Disney song because like growing up, that is the only soundtracks I had in my collection. So we were talking today. We were talking about just like growing up and shows we watched or didn't watch or thought were scary, or any of that kind of stuff. And I had pretty strict parents growing up. My older brother and I were sort of the guinea pigs. So there was a lot of things we weren't allowed to listen to or watch. But one of the things we were is, most any Disney soundtrack was safe. So you didn't have to worry too much about that.
I had a CD copy of the Mulan soundtrack that I think I actually stole it from my brother.
Yeah.
But I would play it on a boom box in my bedroom at night.
Nice.
And my family didn't like that too much. They love the soundtrack, just not playing it late at night.
I can understand that.
I think Mulan had some of the best songs out of a lot of Disney movies.
Those are fun to sing too. I would sing some Mulan songs with you guys. I could concede to that.
The interesting thing about like doing like a master copy of Flowers versus like doing Flowers from life is that you get to have the enjoyment of all of the things already decided on, what's abbreviated, what's not, what's softened, what's not, which is a great exercise for observation when you are looking at it in life. But trying to figure out like, I gotta like channel the essence of Phantom Latour here, because you're like trying to think about what to soften and what to harden, what to state, what to understate.
Do you have a favorite floral that you've done a master copy of?
Actually, I don't. I haven't done a whole lot of master copies of florals, but honestly, I think one of my favorites of all time is Thayer's Roses. Yeah, it's one of my favorites of all time. So I think eventually I need to do one of that one.
Liv, when you painted that, was that during Easter-October?
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah,
She
okay.
did a phenomenal painting of it.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
It was in the primary segment.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Liv said it was during the Taming the Primaries. For anybody on YouTube that wants to go watch it.
I can't believe we did all those challenges. Like looking back on it, that was
It was
really
a feat.
intense.
Yeah, I mean, Lewis did literally every single one of them,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Yeah, I think maybe minus. I think I might have taken a break on one of them. I
I
can't
don't
remember.
know if you did.
Did I do all of them?
I think you did all of them.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I think even one of them I switchered in
Yep.
and did the
Are you serious?
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Anything for my audience, for the East Oaks peeps that continue to hang out with us when we paint. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. It was absolutely a challenge.
Yeah.
It
Do
was
you think
named
it's
well.
something you do again?
We definitely will do East October again as a challenge. I think what we want to do in the future is make the challenge a different challenge every year. So maybe it won't be like a 20-day challenge, but maybe it's to like, do a specific thing, So to be determined. We'll see. Yeah, just now I feel like I'm starting to get to a place where I can really see where I want to make the decisions. Those moments where you're like, man, I should have just done one. Erica, you made the right choice.
Let the record show that Louis told me to do 3.
Yes, I did. I did
Oh
tell
my
her to do
gosh.
3.
Sabotage.
Yep. Mwah.
They are looking great though, Evie.
Oh, thank you.
And Sandra also says, I love the paintings.
Thank you, Sandra.
And the blue hydrangeas are from our backyard here at the studio.
Yep.
We cut those straight from the bush.
Tina, what's your next project?
I'm kind of in the middle of figuring that out myself. I finished a painting before I left on my trip back to Chicago, and I'm in the process of starting a new one. So today I did a color study of what might be my next piece, hopefully will be my next piece. But I also got a new frame today from the Vatican.
Hey.
I ordered 2 and they shipped separately, so I'm waiting on the other one, but it's so nice. I got a DM from someone because I posted on Instagram and someone called it sexy, and I agree. It's a very sexy frame. So hopefully whatever painting I work on next will be going in that frame.
That's pretty cool. Vatican makes really beautiful frames.
It's my first time buying one of their frames, and they've been really sweet. Nigel, who I think is the owner, if not one of the owners, very
Yeah,
kind.
he makes the frames.
Yeah,
He's
very
great.
sweet. and they're such high quality frames. I don't think I've ever had a frame like this well made before. They do a really, really good job. Highly recommend.
Yeah, I just got a new one that I'm putting my portrait of Liv in that I'm really excited about.
Was it one of the ready-mades or was it custom?
I believe it was a custom one.
Nice.
Yeah. It's one of the Flemish corner ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I saw a picture that they posted not too long ago on Instagram of the front door of their studio, like their framing shop is a frame. Like it's amazing. I wish I could. I'll find it and send it to you guys, but it's beautiful. I want to go there so badly.
Field trip.
Yep.
Where is it again? I can't remember.
California?
Yeah.
I don't remember which part. So all the way across the country.
Let's do it. Road trip.
I want to say maybe Fresno.
Mm,
Yep.
maybe.
I could also be pulling that out of thin air, but I feel like as somebody that doesn't really know California well at all, I feel like I must have seen that
Mhm.
somewhere. But I bet California has a lot of pretty spots to go paint.
That's true. California has a very, very diverse geological kind of makeup. Because if you go up north, you have the mountains and it snows up there, which is something that I didn't really know. But if you go down south, obviously, like San Diego, it's super hot. And people don't usually think California is as big as it is. Like, I had someone reach out to me about museum recommendations in California, and I gave them 2 recommendations, but they were within like 8 hours of each other. It's just the state is huge.
Mm. I just, as a lifelong East Coaster, I know there's like this whole like Californian mentality of like West Coast is best coast, and I'm like, I don't know about that.
I don't know, Yuri. I would have to agree with Coast.
Oh!
You know, no one ever talks about the Midwest. I will say that, you know, we never get any credit. So.
Hey, well, you're the
we got
breadbasket.
lakes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got the Great Lakes. We got Wisconsin. You got cheese.
Oh yeah.
So we're winning, basically.
We're winning.
Exactly.
And aren't there like a bunch of cheese caves in Minnesota?
Oh,
Isn't
yeah,
that a
you're
thing?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Yep.
Just all the cheese.
So
It's where all the government cheese was made years ago.
the government cheese.
Mhm.
Gotta get that government cheese.
What
does that
mean?
I don't know.
So back in the day, here's story
History
time with
lesson.
Louis. Story time with Louis. Back in the day, there, I think it was in the 50s and 60s, where there was a huge economic crisis for all of the farmers, especially dairy farmers, for the price of dairy stuff was dropping so rapidly that it was almost making it impossible for dairy farmers to actually produce milk and make it a viable business. So the government enacted a program that basically was like, well, what are we going to do with all this milk if we buy all of this milk from the dairy farmers in order to keep them afloat, because they were basically going to subsidize it all. And they decided, well, the longevity of the milk would be best put into cheese. So they started making government issued cheese that would then be used for everything from the military to the homeless. And so it was stockpiled in the Midwest, in Wisconsin and Minnesota. And that's why one of the reasons Wisconsin's known for cheese is because most of the government cheese was produced there.
Very interesting. I didn't know that.
Wisconsin, home of the government cheese.
That's it.
The people of Illinois, specifically Chicago, because of the Bears, the football team, and the people of Wisconsin, because of the Green Bay Packers, have a very, very bad rivalry. So we refer to Wisconsin people as cheeseheads, and they really lean into it.
I was about to say,
wear
I think
those
they're
hats.
proud.
Oh
of
yeah,
it.
they wear those hats, the cheese hats. So they really it kind of backfired on us because they just use it as a branding opportunity now, which really works for them.
Kind of like the impressionist artists were like, these people are like just mere impressions of reality. And they're like, that ring sounds good.
Wisconsin is actually like the only place in the Midwest I've been to. Actually, no, that's not true. I've been to Iowa, but
Forget about Iowa sometimes.
I do too. And my like ancestry traces back to like that's where my grandmother grew up.
Wow.
No kidding.
Yeah, in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Shout out to Cedar Rapids. But yeah, honestly, I was gonna say Wisconsin actually is like a really beautiful state.
Mhm.
I mean, I know like you hear Wisconsin, you just think cheese and cows and dairy farms, and that is a lot of what it is, sure. But just the culture and all the
Is that
people.
a cheese pun?
Yeah.
Oh, it wasn't, but now it is.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I really like Wisconsin.
Had to be done.
I haven't been.
That counts as the Midwest, right?
Yeah,
yeah.
I haven't been
Oh.
to Minnesota, but I know it's really, really cold there in the winter.
They can be.
I've been to Minnesota. Never mind. I just forget. I've been to the Midwest. I just forget.
That
Apparently.
doesn't give us any more
It's like,
credit.
hey.
Poor Midwest.
Yeah, I've been to Minneapolis,
Mm.
which is a really cool city. It's actually like it seemed at the time at least that there was a pretty decent art scene
Mhm.
in Minneapolis.
They have a great art museum.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I haven't been, but at one point I wanted to do like a little loop up the Midwest to see the museum. So we were going to hit up the Milwaukee Museum, which we did end up going to, which is the best thing in Wisconsin is the Milwaukee Art Museum because they have a Bastien Lepage painting for no reason. I don't know why it's in Wisconsin, but it's amazing, and I hope they keep it there forever. And then we're going to go up to the Minneapolis Museum because it's also really beautiful.
Yeah.
But we ended up going to New York instead. So
It's a fair trade-off.
yeah. Well, we have a question and a comment from Millie. First one, Millie says, amazing. Each one of the paintings looks so beautiful. Thank you very much for sharing so much with us. And she also has a question about frames. She says, how do you decide which style and color to match your paintings? Also, how do you deal with the cost of the frame if the client doesn't like it?
Ooh.
I honestly have an inventory of frames that I've purchased. And I know that I pick what I think goes with the work. And so chances are that if the client doesn't like one, they might like another. And we decide on that before I sell the painting to the client. I mean, like we organize that at the beginning.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good way of doing it, to have physical inventory so you don't have to guess. You can actually pop the painting in and see how it looks.
Yeah. And then I know that, let's say the client doesn't like it, I'll probably use the frame at another point. So
Yeah.
I kind of have my own little stock of it.
Yeah, I think if it's like a personal work that you're selling, then, you probably have a little bit more leeway. And like, if it's a case where somebody sees your work at a exhibition and it's already framed, then, that's the frame. Or if they really wanted to, they could like reach out to you specifically to ask, hey, what's your opinion on like an alternate frame that I could get for your piece? But if it's for a commission specifically, I think asking the client at least like what aesthetic they like their frames. If it's a case where it's like they want something that matches other frames in their house, perhaps. I feel like that's a good question to ask kind of like right off the bat when you get a commission.
Yeah, definitely. I would usually figure out the framing. If you are going to be framing the commission, I would figure it out before purchasing it for the client. So I'll usually give them a few options of, some ready-made frames from either Masterworks, Red Ashby, Vatican, like anything that I usually have access to, and they can pick from there, or they can do the custom route, and then I would guide them through that as well. But it's definitely something that I think you should discuss before buying it, just so that way you save yourself some money, unless it's a size that you think you'll be using in the future on a different project.
That was good advice. In my case, I always do my commissions without the frame, and then I go with them usually and show them frames, or they pick them out on themselves. Sometimes it blows me away, some people's taste in frames, when I end up seeing them later in the home. But yeah, it's a thing.
Yeah, I feel like some people usually have very distinct opinions on how they want their framing. They're either like totally hands-on. They're like, no, I know exactly what I want for a frame. Like, I don't need your help. And some people really need the hand holding and they need the guidance because they're not sure. They're a little insecure about what might look good with the painting. But it's good to be there for them, whichever way they choose. We have a comment from someone from Spain. They say, watching this from the very start from Spain. It's 2:21 a.m. here right
Wow.
now. That's how much I enjoy these live streams.
Oh,
That's
that's
so cool.
awesome.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Well, we appreciate you joining them.
I've always wanted to go to Spain.
Beautiful country.
My all-time favorite food is paella. So someday I'll make it happen.
I always thought the idea of they do the siesta. Like, I always thought that was really interesting. I remember learning about that in like Spanish class. They talked about the culture of Spain and how people just close up for like 2 hours or something in the afternoon and then they reopen in the evening.
Yep.
We don't do that here. Would be nice though.
They did it in Italy too, as well. And once you got used to it, you kind of loved it. But at the beginning, it felt very inconvenient because the one moment you're off, there's no shops that are open to go run any errands. I was the one of only 2 times that I have been arrested. It was in Spain.
Wait, one of 2
Wait,
people
what?
arrested twice?
The other time that I was arrested was in Italy.
Oh, wow. So you just shouldn't go to Europe is what I'm hearing.
I have so many follow-up questions, but I don't know if I should ask on
You
here.
can ask away.
What happened?
I rented, with me and some buddies, rented some mopeds and we were going down a street that was a pedestrian street, but we had no clue that it was in Malaga. And so the police pulled us over, and and basically we all six of us had to be escorted to the police station because none of them spoke English, and there was only two police officers, and so we were having a really hard time trying to explain ourselves. So they took us in. So I don't know if I never was thrown like into jail, but we had to go to the police station.
You were
you
like
handcuffed?
detained, maybe.
Yes, I was detained. That would probably be a better way of saying it. But it just sounds better to say you're arrested. And then in Italy, that's a much longer, more fun, but longer story, which is I was locked out of my apartment, and we lived on the 8th floor of our apartment building. It was the top floor. And so basically we had a balcony, a large balcony, and I asked my neighbors that were a floor below us if I could climb up onto their balcony to get up onto mine to see if I could get back into my apartment, because it was only me there. And that day, none of my roommates were in town. They were all in Florence. And I actually stayed home to paint. That was like what I was planning on doing that day. And the people below us didn't speak very good English, and my Italian wasn't that great. And so all they understood was I needed to get on their balcony, and they were like, okay. So I got on the balcony, and then I'm like, standing on the ledge, and they think I'm about to jump. And so they're like, no. And I'm like, no, just climbing up to my balcony,
Oh my God.
And so, I finally got up there to my balcony, kind of scaled the wall up, 7th floor to 8th floor, mind you. And then
Spider-Man over here. Jeez.
I know.
So I by the way, I was in my PJs. It was in the morning.
My God.
I was in a t-shirt and PJs. And I think this was like maybe 9:30, 10 in the morning. And anyway, I get up there, and the balcony doors are locked. And there's no way to open them. So then I'm like yelling down to the neighbors below, because I'm thinking about scaling back down, which is much more difficult and much more scary. And I make the decision that that's probably not the best thing to do, because it was already a challenge to go up. So I'm sitting there, and I'm trying to think, like, what would MacGyver do? What would MacGyver do? So I look around, and I find like a little screw on the ground, and the head was large enough on the screw to like actually use as a screwdriver for the door handle. So it was December 10th. So it was dead in the middle of winter. The wind was just whipping through. I was freezing, but I'm trying to get this like little screws head to fit into like the flat head screw of the door handle. And I'm like, almost got the thing done. Like almost have it completely unscrewed. And I start hearing whispering from somewhere, when I don't know where it's coming from, except we have this like balcony wall separating us from the neighbor's balcony. And all of a sudden, 4 Carabinieri police officers jump from the wall. And first you're like, oh, police officers, they can help me. And then you're like, wait a minute. And so they push me up against the wall and start patting me down. And it's like, dude, I'm in my PJs. What do you expect? I'm going to have an Uzi in my PJs? Like, So finally I was, they asked me like, what are you doing? And I'm trying to tell them that I live here. Like I'd only been in Italy about a month and a half. So like I didn't know any Italian. I'm like, I live here. And finally they are talking to each other. They don't speak any English except for like cuss words. And finally they look at me and they go, papers? And I was like, papers, yes, papers. I have papers in there. You need to help me break in there. I have papers. And so they actually helped me break into my apartment. And I show them the papers, we have a good laugh. They leave. And then I see them like 4 or 5 days later in a pizza restaurant that I usually would go to. And I went over and like tapped him on the shoulder and like waved at him. And the guy was just like, oh, deal. And so I ended up getting a picture with the main police officer that tried. And I forgot to say, I mean, they absolutely handcuffed me and were taking me back over the wall because they didn't think I was, they thought I was breaking in. The neighbors across the street saw me this whole time, and they were like, I think somebody's trying to break into this apartment. And the only reason that they stopped was because the girls that were on like our group team happened to get wind from our guy group that I might have been in trouble because they were trying to call me and that I couldn't get a hold of me, and they knew that something had gone wrong earlier. And so they were down and they saw two other police officers down, like looking up, and they were trying to get their help. And they realized quickly that these two things were connected. And so they radioed up that this guy was telling the truth. And then that's when they helped me break in. So it was a fun experience now that you're in hindsight. But at the time, it was pretty scary because I didn't know anyone's numbers. You know, I'm about to be taken to an Italian jail and not know anyone. Yeah, it was, and no one knew that I would have been there. You know, it was going to be a thing.
I can't believe we've never heard this story
I know,
before.
right?
It's amazing. Well, I'm glad you were okay. That's wild.
Yeah, it was a fun time.
And climbing up that balcony, I could not do that. Being that high up?
I like that you're like scaling a building on a balcony, locked out, and your thought is, what would MacGyver do? Like, somehow that doesn't seem like the point of reference that you should have.
Well, yes, that part was definitely because I was trying to get creative of how I could break into my apartment with nothing on the balcony. So I was like, where's a paper clip? I need a paper clip. And I had to settle with a screw.
How did they get into the apartment? Was it with the screw then?
Yeah, like they helped me. We undid the handle, which we found to no avail that it would actually help us. But there was 4 of them. So what we did was we pried. They had like they had something on them that they were able to like pry into the door or jimmy into the door, and then we all pulled together and pried it out long enough for us to like flip the handle on the other side of it. So. That's some good memories.
Good memories.
Good times.
Getting arrested. We have a really sweet comment from Mel. They're saying, it's amazing to watch all of you bring your unique sensitivities to the subject. The diversity of talent here is truly inspiring. It's a privilege to see such creative intelligence in action.
Oh,
That's so sweet.
it's awfully sweet. Thank you.
Oh.
And on time, just so everyone knows, it's 8:34.
Cool.
All right. Rounding the corner of time, not my painting. We'll definitely be carrying this over to the next day. Barely made half my progress on this flower. Forgot how large it is.
Are you doing a 9x12?
Yes, a 9x12, uh-huh.
Oh, happy official summer, everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, is today the first day of summer?
It is. It's the
Look at
solstice.
that.
So it's the longest day?
Today is the longest day of the year. Yep.
I do love long days.
Me too.
can't help it anytime I hear summer these days to think of like Olaf being like, in summer. For all the thousands of times I've had to watch Frozen while kids model for me.
Mhm.
Or listen to Frozen, not even watch it.
Yeah.
We have a comment from Mel. They say, I've been looking through Erica's work lately and I am absolutely floored by her florals.
Oh,
Seeing
thank
her
you.
paint live is just awesome. P.S. She hasn't aged a day since FAA. Skincare tips much appreciated.
Thank you. That's really funny.
The secret is just painting florals. They'll never let you age.
I don't know. You can't see my hair from here, but I got a lot of gray.
We have a comment from, I believe it's pronounced Dalen. They say, hello, I enjoyed your guys' demo at the Porch Society conference. It was my first time going and I had a blast. I don't think that we had a chance to meet, but maybe next year. Best wishes. And it was for the Taming the Primaries demo.
Oh, awesome. I'm glad you were there for that. Appreciate you sticking around to the very end of Portrait Society. Hang to do that.
Got to get your money's worth, you know?
Yeah, that's true.
Can't wait for next year already.
Yeah, me too. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm glad it's in DC.
Me too. Yeah. I prefer the walkability of the DC location. So if anyone's joining us next year, I think the hotel just opened up their reservations last week. So if anyone's
Wow.
going, yeah, now's the time. They book up pretty quick.
Yeah, I didn't realize they opened them up that early.
I got an email last week.
From Portrait Society?
One of the many challenges with a subject like this, where you are trying to imply things and create patterns of petals without having to paint literally every one, is to not create too repetitive of a pattern. So I'm noticing a lot of repetitive shapes in mine that I'm trying to break up a bit.
Yeah, but it's looking lovely.
Thank you.
I can't wait to see it up close. It looks beautiful on the screen.
Thank you. I've painted hydrangeas a few times before, and I think they're really fun. They're chaotic, but fun.
How would you rank them on a scale of favorite flower to least?
From favorite flower to peony. I don't know. I think they're like upper mid tier, I would have to say.
I'd be curious to know the breakdown of your least favorite to favorite flowers.
Right?
Peony, we know.
The devil's flower. It's just they move so much and they're so dramatic with how they open and they're like, I'm not going to stay.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you liked how this was going? I'm going to change color on you.
Yeah. They're alive for like a whole 2 hours.
Yeah. So I've tried painting them before. I didn't like that painting. This was several years ago. And then I painted this terrible painting of a fake peony when I was visiting East Oaks, like in 2018. It was awful.
Was this part of Michael's workshop?
No, this was just, I was over here in the summer for a week and you're like, come paint at East Oaks.
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah,
so
yeah,
like it was during the summer, I was just painting this.
That's right.
Painting,
I
like,
remember that.
Trying not to be intimidated by being here with everybody and while I paint my crappy flower. And it was really bad. So I wouldn't recommend painting fake flowers, honestly. If people are trying to paint flowers, I would paint a plant that's like a flower that's growing in dirt. I'd paint that first, like a house plant or something. At least it will stay alive. Like I started with orchids and they don't move as quickly and they stay, pretty well once they're opened. And so that is a good entry to floral painting, I would say. I would do that over fake flowers, only because the way that the light is hitting the petal doesn't quite mimic the way light hits a real flower, and it can be difficult to try to capture the feel of a flower when you're dealing with that.
Yeah.
And then sometimes when something's not moving, you kind of are in this false sense of security with how you're like, oh, my painting's not or my flower's not changing. I can take my time. And sometimes that doesn't work in your favor psychologically. What failed about that painting was the quantity of information I was trying to put in. So next time, and I will attack a peony again. Next time I do that, I will try to simplify more.
We have a comment from Marcus, and this kind of reminds me of when you see like objects and shapes and clouds. But Marcus says, why do I see Mickey Mouse in the upper right painting, which is Evie's? And then Daniel says, oh, he has a cape. And I thought that's so cute.
Oh,
Wait.
Mickey Mouse.
Oh, I see.
You see the ears? Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
With a cape.
Oh my God.
Mickey.
Aww.
I can't unsee
It's
it
a
now.
hidden Mickey.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone knows what hidden Mickeys are.
Yeah.
Disney
Just,
should
they hide Mickeys,
sponsor
right?
me.
Yeah, they hide Mickeys all over. The Imagineers years ago made it like a competition / joke that they would like hide Mickey Mouse in different parts of their designs. And then it just became a thing where amongst the designers that they thought it would be fun. And then that word got out and people started using it as a fun way to do a scavenger hunt while you're at the park. And you can get a book that has all the hidden Mickeys or a lot of them, and it just gives you clues to where they are. And it's a lot of fun, especially as an adult. It just gives you like something extra fun to like look forward to doing.
We have 15 minutes left, everybody.
can assure you that's just for the live stream because there is not 15 minutes left in this painting.
What are you prioritizing in this last 15 minutes?
That's a good question. I think I'm just, I'm still trying to like keep everything unified. The back flower is a bit more choppy and trying to find different avenues to unify it. Because there's a lot of petals that are flipped over in different directions and just hitting the light interesting. So just trying to figure out different ways to make that work. And where it reads well. So a lot of stepping back. I think at the end, though, I'll probably soften a lot of edges for next day.
What's your preferred method for doing that?
I will wait till it gets just a tiny bit dry, and then I'll go in and just like bat it down with like a fan brush. So.
Where it's like kind of tacky.
That's just my way. But
Yeah, I like that too, because then you're not, like you still maintain the integrity of everything you've painted.
Right.
It's just less textured.
Yep. It just helps you reset for, working into the edges the next day and trying to like create, gives you a second chance at making a good edge, prioritizing things.
Back on the topic of Disney, Marcus says, I bought a cookbook a few years ago on an estate sale. On the inside page, it was inscribed Happy Birthday, and there was a drawing of Pluto signed by one of the original Disney animators.
Oh, that's cool.
That's cool. That's awesome.
What a fun find. I love getting books on like Amazon, like used, because every now and again you'll find notes in them. And I found one that had a to-do list in it. And it was like, mend the chicken fence. I can't remember, like there's two other ones that were, study, study for the exam. And then one of them was like, solve life problems or figure out life or something like that. I have it saved somewhere, but it was amazing.
I hope
Loved
they
it.
got that done.
Yes. Right?
We have a question from our friend from Spain. They're asking, if you saw your beginner self and could only tell them one secret / tip you've learned, what would you tell them?
In life in general, I'm wondering.
Probably art, but I guess if you want to go more life advice, that's fine too.
A single tip. Is that right?
Just one. If you had to pick one.
Don't do it. No. Run. No. It's a hard one. I have to think on that one for a bit.
It would probably for me be something along the lines of like, don't put too much pressure on yourself, or something along the lines of like, it doesn't have to be perfect.
Mm.
And like, don't kind of where you're not being afraid to make mistakes and make a mess or ruin the painting or whatever. Like, don't worry about it. Something like that.
I like that.
Mine would just be keep going. Don't
Yeah.
ever give up. And that doesn't mean like, don't take breaks and, like take care of yourself, but don't give up.
I think for both of us, Evie, both our answers kind of speak to how painting is a game of how many hours you put in, essentially.
Yeah.
And so anything that can let you keep going. So sometimes that means the pace is slower, and that means you're focusing more on continuity rather than quantity. And sometimes that's just in your head, giving yourself permission to mess up, make bad paintings, make mistakes, whatever gets you just to keep going and not have it remove anything that's inhibiting you.
Definitely.
Essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, just like cherish the time. Like, life is unpredictable, time is precious, and the time that we get to spend doing this is so precious.
Yeah, I like that.
I feel like I did do this when I was a student, but at Florence Academy, but really when I was there, like it's such a luxury to be able to work from the model from life. And so I'm not looking back on it as a time of regret that I wish I would have appreciated, but I'm just looking back at that time as like, that was such a special time to be able to do that every day and almost not adding, like if you're not, like don't add unnecessary pressure, like kind of enjoy being there and don't add unnecessary pressure to it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe something like that.
That's good.
We're just learning to enjoy the struggle of learning.
Yeah.
Because it's not easy for anybody. I think like I would maybe want to tell my younger self, like, this doesn't really come naturally to anybody overnight. It's something that literally everybody who does this has worked hundreds of thousands of hours on being able to do this. So, learning to like get a thick skin and not sell yourself short through comparisons.
I love that because it's like if you're struggling, and everybody will hit a wall eventually.
Yes.
It's not a sign that you shouldn't be painting or you shouldn't be doing this. It's whether you enjoy figuring things out, and whether the pros outweigh the challenges. Those are things you could consider, but just the struggle itself, like everybody faces that. So not letting that part of it inhibit you from continuing.
Dropping some truth bombs over here.
What about you, Louie? Where's your truth bomb?
I mean, I feel like y'all have kind of covered the gamut on a lot of it. I think that, I think the thing I'll add is that when you've made a decision to try to commit to doing something like this, you're all in. You're just trying to soak things up like a sponge, and you start doing what is expected of you to be done, but to not lose sight of what brought you joy for doing it in the beginning.
I love that.
And sometimes you start doing things because you know that other people are doing the things. This kind of goes back to being a profession, or it could be like for me, one of the big things that I tell people is I deliver almost all of my paintings that I do as commissions by hand, because part of what I love about doing it is creating an impact in someone's life. And to see that first reaction that they have to something that emotionally connects so deeply to them is beautiful and inspiring for me to want to keep going. And if I were to say, you know what, it just takes too much time to go hand deliver all of those things because it'd be faster and more efficient for me not to do it, then, and that would logically make sense. But at the end of the day, like those are one of the things that make me get up in the morning to want to do what I do and not to lose sight of that. And so whatever it is that is your thing of why often I think it's just like the sense of discovery. Some people it's like they mastered something and then they start losing the passion of doing it because they're like, well, I've already conquered that thing. And they forget to kind of like go back to the drawing board and rediscover something new to add to their whole deal. So discovery might be a part of what it is that they're looking forward to pushing into. And so whatever the thing is, don't stop doing it just because maybe it's less efficient to do it or whatever, because you can literally kill your career based off of not doing the thing that brought you joy in the first place.
I love what you just said. And I think that it's an opportunity to set yourself apart from what other people are doing.
Yeah.
And it's more fun too, because you genuinely value it. And it's part of your, it's part of your whole art experience.
Art experience, it's even without even trying, it's a part of your brand.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's something that I've had to discover in myself, because it's so easy to get caught up in the weeds of just the day in and day out. And sometimes you lose sight of why you were doing it in the first place. And then people literally have that moment. They're like, why am I even doing this?
I think it's natural when you do it as a profession to have that almost re-questioning, like after you've maybe studied and you're like, okay, why am I doing this?
Yep. Yep. So.
Yeah, like the transition of passion to profession.
Yeah.
Like, how do you do that without losing the passion?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of people struggle with that.
Just so everyone knows, we have 1 minute left.
Whew.
That truth bomb just cost me.
It's worth it.
Regrets. Well, while we are wrapping up this session, not wrapping up the painting, or at least not me, everyone, I'm so glad that you all have joined us this evening. I hope that we were able to be a fun guest in your house for at least a few hours while you were either painting in your studio or hanging out at your dining room table or in the living room, wherever it is. We've heard all the people and all the places, we just want you to know that we appreciate you being a part of our audience and all the questions and the participation that y'all take in and take your time out, carving your time out in the middle of the night in Spain. All of those kinds of things. It really is special for us to hear that. It's what keeps us doing it. So I hope, best wishes to everyone in your painting, and from here at us at East Oak Studio to you in your studio. Y'all have a lovely evening, and until next month, we have a fabulous model set up for next month, and we look forward to hearing from you then. Y'all have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.